Hey, as others may or may not trickle in, I put in the chat, but if you didn't see it, please just make sure to put your full name and your chapter. I'll use that for attendance. So I can go back and look at the chat and make sure I have your name right, which is really important. For folks who don't know me, my name is Taylor Outler. I'm the chapter health manager. Um, what that means, it sounds really fancy, but essentially I just support all the chapters. So if you have issues relating to, let's see, personnel, or if you have issues relating to chapter morale, or maybe your chapter is just imploding because you're hitting midterms and nobody wants to be there or anything like that, I can help support you with a array of things. So yeah, that's me. This is the other side of my work outside of OFIA. I work at a nonprofit, and half of my time is spent providing grant money directly to schools, and the other half is around mental health education for the community. So this is like my baby. It's the other side of me. So I'm glad I could bring it into this space too, and hopefully it'll benefit a lot of you guys, especially as you're coming to midterm week and you're about to go into March. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. If at any point you can't hear me, you can't see anything, etc., just let me know. You can put it in the chat or you can unmute. If you are able to, I will ask that you put your camera on, even if you were just showing the ceiling or something else, just to make sure you're present. Would love to see your faces. And this will be an interactive session, so we'll need some talking at some point, just flagging that in advance. Okay, so this is navigating the balancing act, beating burnout. So the flow for today, quick introduction into like what this space is, what does it mean, etc. I'll have a question for you all just to see where you all are. Talk about stress, talk about burnout, some techniques that you can utilize, some conclusions, and then peace out. If we finish early, that's fine. I'm happy to give time back. If we go to the end, that's also fine. If you have lots of needs and things that are coming up for you, like this is the space, feel free to keep talking. So to set the tone, just want to emphasize the statement that talking about topics such as stress and burnout can activate feelings or emotions within you. Please know this is a brave space where you can share your struggles, and there is also no pressure to you. I don't want you to feel like we're passing the baton and you have to share and you have to share. That's not how I lead, and so I want to make sure you just feel comfort all around. I also ask that you respect the space, allow everyone to share their truths, and also use this space to learn. What might work for you may work for someone else, or it might not, and that's okay. So wanted to do this quick introduction, but also show this video. I think it's always important and crucial to showcase that like we are not alone in a lot of the emotions that we hold, because sometimes it can feel that way, which is really frustrating. But always want to emphasize that you guys, especially as a college student, you hold so many identities, whether you're a student and you're also a sibling, and you are also a daughter or a son or just a child. You also might identify in a different sexual expression, and that might cause like a lot of harm to come your way, or you might be a minority, right? So there's a lot of identities that you may hold, and all of that impacts and intersects with the fact that you're also a student, which is a lot as well. So the struggles that you navigate are valid. Want to name that, and also that you aren't alone in that. So here's a quick video that we can watch.
Already went into college, already burned out, honestly, like with just school, and I was tired. And
from going to class, working full-time at a retail store, having a girlfriend,
and also just trying to balance the other roles in my life as a friend and as a daughter and as a roommate.
Y hasta un punto, un poco de depresión, y no creo que era muy bueno.
I ended up dropping out after a few months, just because it was just too big of a change for me or too hard on me for whatever reason.
Being Hispanic, black, white, I was like, I couldn't conform to a group because everyone looked at me differently.
I think there were moments of just a lot of physical and mental exhaustion.
Se me aprieta atrás del cuello.
Like the shortness of breath, kind of like I can't breathe.
I felt like I was done with the world. I was like, so upset, sad, angry.
Y arriba de la cabeza se aprieta y se siente todo rojo.
I kept everything so bottled in.
And eventually it's gonna build up and like boil.
It's like a volcano. It's like, you know how they get...
Como si voy a explotar y ¡pum! Pues bueno.
Okay, so I have some questions for you all. As you listened to a very quick video and heard what other students' experiences, did that resonate with you? Do you feel like your stressors were listed? Did you feel like some were missing? Do you have conversations around these topics normally as well, whether that's within your chapter or with your friends or just your community in general? And feel free to put it in the chat too if you don't feel like unmuting. I can uplift it for you.
I definitely agree with some of the experiences. Like I feel like I kind of got into college a little bit burnout, and I came in when COVID was happening, so I definitely was stressed with missing a lot of high school experiences and starting a whole new thing too. So definitely was kind of a stressful environment.
Thank you for sharing that. Kinsey listed also going into college burnt out.
For me, it was definitely when they said like managing the different roles of being like a daughter, a student, a roommate, because like there's just so much on my plate, I feel like in college. So I feel like definitely relating to that, just trying to manage each of my different roles the best I can.
Thank you for naming that. Do other folks want to share? Okay. And this won't be the only time to share too, so don't feel like you missed your mark. So first, I want to talk about stress. So what is it, right? So college life, where stress becomes your ultimate study buddy. So you're juggling a tons of responsibilities, you're playing catch up with time and turning into night owls, and it could really throw off your balance, right? So when you're cramming for exams, battling for the coolest internships, your pressure cooker never really cools down. So you're just constantly going and going and going. Just when you think you have it figured out, bam, life throws another curveball your way. Decisions, career pathways, academic choices, making friends. It's a roller coaster ride. But it's important to pause for a second, pinpoint your stress triggers, and then show them who's boss. So what a lot of people actually don't know is that there are 3 different types of stress. So you have your acute stress. This is what results, your body has a reaction to just like a new or challenging situation. So if you're driving, your tire goes flat, you're immediately experiencing acute stress because you're like, oh my God, this just happened. This is dampening my day. It's also the feeling that you can get from an approaching deadline, or if you're like narrowly avoid being hit by a car, little things like that. Episodic acute stress is when acute stress happens, but on a frequent basis. So this can be because of repeatedly tight work deadlines, or if you have a class where every Friday, you know you have an assignment due, or you know that you have a teacher that's always doing a pop quiz, but you never know where, but you always have a little bit of stress knowing that when you walk into class, it could happen that day. Chronic stress is the result of stressors that continue for a long time. So this type of stress feels like it's never ending. And it's also very difficult seeing any way to improve or change that situation when you're in the thick of it. So it can kind of feel like, oh, there's always something, and I just can't seem to shake it. And then you can get to a point where you lean into different disorders or diseases that can come from that, such as depression or anxiety and things like that if it isn't taken care of. The same way when we think of chronic health issues, those things are persistent. If they aren't taken care of, etc., it can lead to detrimental effects. Same with your mental health and your stress. It's all connected and it almost is like a sliding scale of like acute all the way to chronic. So recognizing stress. Tiny doses of stress can give you a little kick in the pants. Like when you get a little bit of stress and then you're able to like ace your exam, or you just like shake up your routine a little bit, that's fine. But when stress decides to like crash on your couch for the long haul, that's when things get messy. Chronic stress can start wreaking havoc on your body, on your mind, and that'll cause a whole circus of troubles, like constantly playing hooky from class. When I was in college, I think it was my junior year, I really started experiencing chronic stress from a lot of stuff that was going on. And I had one class that I never went to. I almost failed the class because of it. But it really is important to me now to really name that, because I was able to go on the other side of it, right? Additionally, it can mess with your brain power. So if you notice that you're constantly stressed and then you're always having what a lot of people will call brain fog, because you just can't finish a thought, or it's really difficult for you to just strand your thoughts together, that can be a result of stress. And even hitting like really big health problems. So stress can be the ultimate party crusher, is the way that I word it. Some other ways of just how this may show up: your heart rate is constantly increasing, sweating or perspiration, anxiety, emotional ups and downs, where you're not really able to like regulate how you're actually feeling. That can be that. Poor sleep, feeling overwhelmed, migraines, or even uncontrolled anger or irritability. Okay, before hopping to burnout, did any of this surprise you? Was there anything that you didn't know that you were like, oh my God, I never heard of that? Anything that you want more information on? Feel free to unmute or put it in the chat. Okay. I'm going to take it as you feel good, as good as you can. Okay, so let's talk burnout. So what is that? This is when stress turns into a daily struggle. And it's usually time to hit the pause button and address that issue. So college burnout in particular creeps in when students swim in a sea of stress for too long, where you're like constantly exhausted or you feel disconnected, and you're like losing interest in your studies as well. Oh, Emma, I didn't realize chronic stress could impact our health so seriously. Yes, I feel like that's also like a very common statement, when people first learn about stress and like the levels of it, is not realizing that like your body will like actually have a reaction to what's going on. If you ever want like a reading recommendation, The Body Keeps Score is a really good book that talks about how trauma and stress can like stay in our bodies, and you might notice it in different places, whether you're like constantly having like a hip issue. Like for women in particular, a lot of our stress is held in our hips, and in our shoulders. So those are like little things that might be interesting if you're into that. Oh, let me not skip. So there are also 3 types of burnout. So we have overload burnout. This is the most common one, where you're like constantly pushing yourself to the limit to like have success. Or you're juggling work and personal life like a circus act. You're just like heading right towards burnout. This is the classic one, and it's the one that I would say people are easily able to recognize. So for me, I noticed that working a full-time job plus working OFIA, plus a long time ago, like in May, I was in grad school as well. I was burning the candle on both ends. That's another saying you might hear, where you're constantly going, and then you're not taking a pause. So whenever you do have a pause, your body might literally shut down. Or if you notice when you're going to sleep, you're like collapsing because your body is finally able to rest. There are little ways that like your body will show you, wow, I was really exhausted. Thank you for resting right now. And that's like one way. You might also notice if you are in conversations and you're like quite literally blinking, you just like, you don't know what's going on. You're like, wow, what is going on? Your body is like literally shutting down. And so you really need to pause and take a break. The next burnout is under challenged burnout. So, you know, that feeling, I don't know what that's saying. Let's flip that around. So let's see. under challenged burnout is like the yin to overload burnouts yang. So an example is like you're stuck in a snooze fest at work, you're feeling as lively as a wilted houseplant. And the lack of oomph leaves you feeling underappreciated, or you're stuck in a rut without chances to grow or learn or bond with your work buddies and bosses. So essentially, under challenge burnout is if you just feel like you were underutilized. And so because of that, you're like, I don't really need to do anything. There's no reason for me to do this. Kind of burnt out of just constantly never being recognized, never being challenged in a sense of like what you could do. And so you just kind of get to a point of just like stagnancy. That's what under challenge burnout is. That one's a little less common, or folks don't know that there's a name for it usually. And then the last one is neglect. So this is like the worn out type. It creeps in when you feel like a lost puppy in a storm of challenges. It pops up when work lacks clear guidance, where you just feel like you're kind of stranded without a map. You're struggling to keep up or feeling like you're falling short, which can make you feel like incompetent or frustrated or have like a bunch of doubt swirling inside of you. So this one might be really good if you're in a class that is just like talking about the most insane things and you just can't catch it. For me, that was physics. I don't know if anyone here is a physics major. Very proud of you if you are. But myself, no. And so taking physics, I got burnout immediately because I just could not follow what the path of thinking was. And so it just constantly made me feel like I was not smart enough to be in that class. And so if you're experiencing that, that's kind of what the name is. That is what you're experiencing and that emotion that lives inside there. So recognizing burnout. So the 6 signals of burnout include feeling wiped out, losing your sparkle of like motivation or interest, your creativity taking a hike, your concentration playing hide and seek, your crankiness hitting the roof, you're falling sick often, and you're kind of cozying up to anxiety and the blues. So these are those big 6 things that if you notice that they're not a one-off, but more so a frequent kind of thing, you really might be tiptoeing into burnout. So one of the easiest ways to tell, I would say, is really keeping like a track of like what you do on a daily basis, whether it's like a mood tracker of like, how did I feel today? And you notice like the way that you define your emotions. If you're constantly feeling tired, if you're constantly feeling just meh, like if that's one of your emotions, if you're constantly feeling frustrated, unheard, and those are kind of those things that are just consistently coming up, it might be a good time to take a pause and kind of reflect on, okay, well, why do I feel this way? What is causing me to feel this way? And you might notice that it's kind of pointing to burnout, right? And so finding a way to recenter that with some techniques I'll share later. Here are some like tangible examples of how it might show up. So you overlook your own needs or personal life to fulfill work demands or school demands for you all. You invest more than is healthy in your commitment to your career or your ambitions. You endanger your well-being to achieve goals. You stop trying when work situations don't go as planned. You give up in response to obstacles or setbacks you face at work. You feel demoralized when you get up in the morning and have to face another day at work. You would like to work on assignments and tasks that are more challenging. You feel your job does not offer you opportunities to develop your abilities. You feel that your current role is hampering your ability to advance or to develop your talents. So, have you all been experiencing burnout currently? And do some of these really resonate with your like current experience as well? Feel free to put it in the chat or unmute. 100%. Oh, happy. Thank you for sharing and naming it. How about for others?
I think especially the first one resonated with me because kind of putting other demands first, like for work or school or whatever else it is, but not taking enough time for yourself. I think that's something that happens to a lot of students, especially kind of overbooking themselves and then not actually taking a second to like recoup and stuff, because I think that's important, but something that myself and I know a lot of people kind of forget about. So
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing. Okay. So I wanted to dedicate one slide to really talk about the differences of stress versus burnout. So this is going to lean in to talking about how burnout is different, essentially. So burnout is like stress's sneaky cousin that creeps up on students after being ignored for too long. It's the stress that overstays its welcome, turning students into emotional, mental, and physical hermits, usually. Sometimes it can be really tricky to tell stress and burnout apart, but peeking at the symptoms can light up the differences. So, feeling stressed but not burned out might bring on being overly invested, riding an emotional roller coaster, feeling like a ticking time bomb, running on fumes, battling anxiety, dealing with physical pains like headaches, tummy troubles, chest tightness, or gasping for air. The golden rule is stress is a sprint with a finish line, while burnout feels like an endless marathon without a medal in sight. It's like a good short analogy to hopefully like help differentiate the difference. So some prevention techniques. So when we're thinking about proactiveness, of how to make sure that you don't get to stress or burnout level, there are like 5 buckets that I'll talk a little bit more about that might be helpful. And then I'll ask you all if you already do some things within this bucket that you'll be willing to share with the group that might help someone else. So time management, prioritization, scheduling, and breaks. So when I say prioritization, one thing that I have to do so I don't overwhelm myself is I make a big 3 each day of if I complete these 3 things, I'm good. Anything else would be lovely, but here are my big 3. So then I don't put too much pressure on myself to have this really long to-do list every single day where I would constantly feel like I'm never getting everything done. Scheduling is my best friend. My Google Calendar is my best friend. I highly recommend if you don't have somewhere where you keep your schedule, do it. It makes a huge difference whether you do it electronically or you do it physically with like an actual agenda. There's so many versions to where you'll be able to just make your life a little bit easier. And then breaks. When I say breaks, I mean like if you have to, because maybe you are a super scheduler, schedule in a break for yourself, schedule in a walk for yourself, schedule in time to go exercise, schedule in things that you need the same way that you would schedule in a meeting. You are just as important. And so making sure you break that time down, it'll help a lot. Goals. So set realistic goals and expectations, such as SMART goals. Oh my God, what does SMART stand for? Specific, measurable, actionable, reasonable, and targeted, I think. Could be so wrong. But I think that's what SMART stands for. But just making sure that your goals are like actually something that you can commit to and that is specific enough that you will know what you're trying to accomplish. Because having a goal of, I just want to walk more, it's great, but it's kind of hard to set yourself accountable with that. Whereas if you say, I want to walk for at least 30 minutes for 4 days out of the week, that's a little bit easier to track. And it'll be a little bit more realistic to what you can do instead of just creating a void bubble that might be a little bit more stressful to maintain. Self-care. So incorporate these activities into your day or your week, such as exercise, hobbies, relaxation, all of those things. And when you say self-care, I also want to clarify like self-care doesn't have to be typical self-care models. It just has to be self-care for you. So if that just looks like playing video games so your mind has a break, do that. Or if it is scrolling TikTok for a little bit and just scrolling to just decompress for a second, do that too. Do what you need to do that is caring for yourself. And also, if you don't do certain things, like you just want more suggestions, things like pottery is fun, glass blowing is fun, face masks, going to a candle concert and just like sitting and listening to music that you love. So many different things that you can do to really lean into caring for yourself. Boundaries. This is a really hard one for a lot of people, including me, but really trying to establish clear boundaries for you. Doesn't matter what anyone else thinks, it's for you. The art of saying no, which can be really, really challenging, especially for the people pleasers in the building. But it's something that is just so needed for yourself and for your self-care. So just practice like self-compassion and acceptance. That's really what you're doing when you're setting boundaries. You're thinking about yourself and what you need. And it can be really hard when you're used to helping others or trying to put others first. And navigating that can be a little challenging, but in the long run, it is a prevention technique that will help you. And then lastly, support. Seek support that makes sense for you, such as counseling, peer groups, mentors, whatever works. But you really want to make sure you're building a support system with your friends, your family, and your advisors. There's usually someone for everyone. And so please make sure that you do have at least one person that you can utilize as kind of your support buddy, that you can tag in when you really need it. So these are some prevention techniques. Now I'll ask you guys, are there things within this that you do that you wouldn't mind sharing with the group that might help someone else? Let's see. After a certain time each night, I stop answering GroupMe. Ooh, Abby, you're a genius. Yes, absolutely. Figuring out how long you need to sleep and trying to meet that goal every night and building boundaries around your bedtime. Yes, that's amazing, Kinsey. I'm trying to get there now. I use my sleep app on my phone and I try to religiously not change it. That one's hard for me. Kadira, scheduling in breaks so that I don't feel guilty taking them. Yes. Shannon, I've been setting boundaries and giving myself me time. Love. Megan, I prioritize things every day. And one of those things is exercising and going to the gym with my friends. Oh, I love that. That's a 2-for-1. That's physical body movement and social connection with your friends. So that's a 2-for-1. Love that. Yay. Thank y'all for sharing. These are awesome. Using do not disturb for sleep. Yes. And when I need to have time to myself. Yes. That is beautiful. One thing that one of my friends does is they use a sunlight alarm clock. If you've ever heard of one of those, but it's like by your bed, and when it's time to wake up, it just shines light on your face. So like you could try and like get in accordance with your sleep schedule being as the sun rises and as it sunsets and all of those things. So then in the winter, like you get more sleep, almost like how animals hibernate a little bit more and get more rest during that time because it's a downtime. And so she's really big on adjusting your circadian rhythm to reflect nature. So that's like an intense version of really recentering your life, but there's so many options down the line. So I also wanted to share some de-stress techniques because you're bound to have stress. But here are some ways that you can re-regulate your nervous system, which is important. So these are some that might be familiar or that might be new to you, but just wanted to share. Cold exposure. So you might see a lot of folks that do the ice baths. They are so good for you. Having that shock of the cold is actually really good to help re-regulate your nervous system, because as you have the shock, your breathing might become kind of very erratic. And then once you're adjusting, you're taking deep breaths and you're re-regulating your system and your body is adjusting to its new environment, which is amazing. So even if you do a cold shower, you can have that same effect. So doing a cold shower, cryotherapy, if you have the funding, it can get a little pricey. And ice baths, those are really good. Grounding in nature, whether you go on a hike or you're just walking outside or you literally go in your backyard and you just step on grass. All of those things are so important to just recentering yourself and can re-regulate yourself. Just the feeling of grass is enough, having sun on your face is enough. All of those things are just super helpful to just get you back to a place where you can breathe normally and get into your groove. Creativity and art. This is one of my faves. So painting, whether it's like watercolors or doing a paint and sip, or doing acrylic painting, whatever. Painting is just golden. Pottery is super fun, whether you're doing like slabs and you're doing stuff or you're doing it on the wheel. Graphic design. There are just so many with this. Even trying Zentangling, that was something new I learned. That was pretty fun. Doing crocheting or knitting, just stuff with your hands where you're actually just investing in something and doing something is really nice to just clear your mind for a little bit and focus on something else. Another one is like clothing deconstruction. That one's really, really fun if you are able to do that. Meditation. So just doing a Zen meditation, a body scan is always really good. And it's actually something that you can do literally anywhere, just like sitting in your chair, adjusting yourself and like taking a moment and just taking a deep breath and seeing what are you noticing in your body? Are you noticing your shoulders are stiff? Maybe your shoulders were up to here because you were so stressed and you were just like this and you didn't even realize it. So bring your shoulders down. We take a deep breath. How are your feet feeling? How are your legs feeling? How does your head feel? Your neck? Just take a quick scan and breathe in and just zen out a little bit. Or if you're doing a guided meditation, YouTube has really good ones, Spotify, Apple Music, all of those are just super easy. And all you have to do is listen and breathe. Especially if you feel like your brain will just randomly start thinking about things. Guided meditation is really good. I had to do that for a while because I noticed if I just sat there, my brain would start making a to-do list of stuff that I could do for work. And I was like, oh, that's not actually helping me. So the guided one can be helpful to get started. Binaural beats. So different like sound frequencies have been shown to like really zen yourself out, as well as like certain colors. You'll notice like if you just go on YouTube and put it in, or if you go on Spotify, some will just pop up and you can utilize that to just like really zen yourself out a little bit. Breath work. So box breathing is really helpful. We'll actually practice that a little bit later in this session. Wim Hof breathing, holotropic breathing, all of those things are just super helpful. Next is EFT tapping. So chakra tapping, inner child, matrix re-imprinting. You might also, and I might talk about this a little later, but butterfly tapping, if you've never done that, where you're just kind of like holding yourself and you just tap to recenter yourself and you breathe in. It can just be really quick to just give yourself a hug and check in with yourself. Journaling is super helpful if you don't journal. This can be you manifesting things. It could just be you dumping your stream of consciousness out and just trying to figure out what's going on, what's happening. It can also be like you dream journaling of what are things that like you're either updating on dreams that you've had, or you're talking about dreams that you want to have, right? What are things you want to aspire to, and just having that be your space for that. Somatic shaking. You might notice when you were younger, in elementary school, they probably told you to shake it out, just like do this. Or if you watch Grey's Anatomy and they dance it out, all of those things are really good for your body. You're shaking out the stress, quite literally. And you can do it standing, you can do it seated, you can do your full body, your leg, your arm, whatever you need, but just shaking your body, that movement can help so much. Next is yoga and stretching. So there's different kind like vinyasa, power, yin, bikram. All of those things are helpful, but that movement piece is just so critical, and you just bring in so many endorphins for yourself, which is crucial. A bath, love baths, highly recommend. And then lastly, time with yourself and or time with safe people. Emphasis on safe people that make you feel like you can fully be you, no matter how you are showing up. So I wanted to share, oh, I did put it on here, great. I wanted to share these two common mindfulness activities. These are also ones that you can easily do at the start of your chapter. So feel free to like utilize these. Let me know if you want to use them to just start the space. But 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you look around and you notice 5 things you can see, 4 things you can feel, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. This just purposefully takes you into the details of your surroundings, makes you use all your senses, and it's helpful with just like recentering yourself in a new space. So this is also really good. Like if your chapter meeting isn't in its normal space, you can do this activity. So then it just recenters them in the new space and it makes them take a moment and pause before you get started with your chapter meeting. Like I mentioned earlier, butterfly tapping, where you cross your arms, allow your hands to rest on the opposite of each arm, and then you tap. And then you alternate with the whole hand using 1 finger, 2 fingers. If tapping feels awkward for you, you can also just squeeze, right? And then you breathe in and out as you're doing these things. You can close your eyes, soften your gaze, and just breathe, take breaths, recenter yourself. But it's good. And it kind of leans into the self-hugging literature that's out, that we don't hug ourselves enough anymore. We don't receive hugs enough. And so even just taking a moment to hug yourself has so many benefits for your mental health as well. So now I wanted to share a practice with you, and we can do this one together. So you can, if you are on camera, I think everyone's off right now, so that works out perfect. Okay. So we'll do this one together. So adjust however you're seated comfortably, whether you were seated in a chair or you were laying down, etc. Just get in a comfortable space. And then we're going to box breathe together. This is also another one that you can do at the start of a chapter meeting. So you'll breathe in for 4 counts of just hold it for 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause. 1, 2, 3, 4. And so you can continue to do rounds of that. I normally recommend doing at least 3 rounds, but it's just like a let's pause. Like, especially if everybody's kind of just yapping away, there's so much excitement. Yay, 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 yay. That also means there could be so much overstimulation for someone else. And so taking that moment to just everyone, let's breathe. Let's pause. We re-regulate the way that we are entering the space and we slow down our heart rate, which is also really helpful for folks that might be experiencing anxiety or beginning to experience stress. Okay, so yay, we did finish early. I can give you time back. So right now I'll leave space. You can scan this QR code. This is the feedback form for all of the Office of Leadership Academy sessions. And I will stay on if you have questions. If you have a need for your chapter, let me know. I don't mind also doing this presentation for them or adapting it to be something that you need. Just let me know, but I will stay on until the last person leaves. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, Lacey. Did you need anything? Hi, Lacey. Oh, you're good. Okay.